Today, we're really immersing ourselves in quite a situation playing out in Chicago. We've got a stack of sources here, and the language they're using,
Yeah.
well, it's intense. We're talking about federal immigration operations described as turning neighborhoods into a war zone.
Yeah, an invading army was another phrase used.
So-
And it's not just rhetoric. It seems to reflect real significant tension on the ground. Our sources are documenting this renewed, very aggressive federal deportation drive. We're talking over 1,000 arrests just in the Chicago area recently.
So for this deep dive, we really need to get past the headlines. We want to look closely at, well, three key things, right?
Mhm.
The actual tactics being used, the official justification from DHS, and then this big counterattack legally and politically from local and state levels.
Exactly, that's the mission. Because the scale is one thing, over 1,000 arrests, okay. But it's the way it's happening, the reported aggression. Especially, as you mentioned, focusing on areas like South Shore, places that just recently took in asylum seekers. It suggests something much more than just routine enforcement is going on here.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's really set the scene based on these allegations. The tactics witnesses and local officials are describing, they sound almost like something out of a movie. What specifically are we hearing?
Well, the reports are pretty detailed, and they paint this picture of very visible, very intimidating force. We're reading about agents using helicopters over residential areas, unmarked trucks surrounding apartment buildings, like 5-story buildings.
Was really...
Yeah, helicopters. And even allegations of agents rappelling down buildings. Imagine seeing that in your neighborhood. The community reaction described in the sources. It's clear people were, frankly, terrified by this sudden, overwhelming federal presence.
And it's not just the hardware, the trucks and helicopters. The sources also detail allegations about how agents acted when they actually went inside places, like ignoring basic procedures.
Exactly. That's a huge part of it. We're seeing claims that agents were breaking down doors, using zip ties on residents almost immediately. And this is critical, allegedly doing this sometimes without presenting a warrant. And reportedly, this included U.S. citizens and even minors.
Right. That's the part that really fuels the outrage, isn't it? Because it hits at constitutional protections. Protections for everyone, not just based on immigration status.
Precisely.
There's this specific case mentioned, Roger Johnson, a 67-year-old U.S. citizen. What do the sources say happened there?
According to the reports, he alleges agents just forced their way into his apartment. He asked to see a warrant, asked to speak to his lawyer, and his statement was, quote, "They never brought one."
So what's the implication there? When you have a U.S. citizen saying they were detained, denied basic due process during a federal op like this.
Well, the implication is massive. It kind of validates the fear that people are expressing. If agents are, reportedly operating with this level of force and potentially disregarding warrants, then the operations themselves feel indiscriminate, threatening to everyone. There's a quote from Dixon Romeo from Southside Together. He talked about doors torn from hinges and said, "This is not normal. It's not okay." It captures that feeling. It's not just about enforcing the law, it's how it's being enforced.
Okay, but we absolutely have to bring in the federal perspective now. Because tactics this visible, this aggressive, it suggests that the government believes there's a serious threat justifying it. We need to understand that side.
Right. And DHS has been pretty specific about who they say they're targeting. That's central to their narrative.
Yeah.
They've stated this surge is aimed at members of the Venezuelan gang Tren Aragua and also individuals involved in, drug and weapons crimes.
Okay, Tren Aragua. For listeners who might not know, why is naming that specific gang so important for the federal justification here?
Well, it immediately shifts the focus. It moves it from just immigration enforcement to tackling violent transnational crime. Tren de Aragua started in Venezuelan prisons, and they've become notorious. Really brutal violence, sophisticated networks, extortion, trafficking, kidnapping, that kind of thing.
So by naming them,
DHS frames these operations as vital national security work, absolutely essential. And that, in their view, justifies the more extreme tactics as necessary for public safety and for agent safety, too.
And the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, she reinforced that point about agent safety.
She did, yes. Secretary Noem defended the tactics, said they're necessary to protect agents operating in what she called extremely dangerous situations. So the agency's line is, we're going after dangerous criminals, our agents face high risks, therefore these tactics repelling, flashbangs, heavy vehicle presence are required.
But you noted something interesting. They defended the mission, defended the tactics for agent safety. But what about the specific allegations we just talked about? The civilians, the kids in zip ties?
Right. And that's where we see a strategic silence, it seems. The sources note the agency actively refused to address those specific claims. The reports about children being zip-tied or families being separated during the operations.
So they defend the mission target, but not the how when it comes to alleged collateral impacts.
Pretty much. And that selective engagement seems to be just pouring fuel on the fire on the ground, making things even more volatile.
And the aggression wasn't just limited to making arrests, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier it spilled over into using things like chemical agents in neighborhoods.
Yes, and this is a really critical flashpoint because it shows the impact spreading directly into everyday civilian life. Not just the targets. We have reports detailing incidents where agents allegedly released some kind of chemical canister near a public school. This was in Logan Square.
Your school.
Near Funston Elementary, yeah. The school actually had to move recess indoors immediately to protect the kids.
Wow. So when federal operations are literally forcing schools to change their schedules for safety.
Exactly. That's a clear line being crossed, you know? Between targeted law enforcement and broad community disruption, it raises serious questions.
And things apparently got even more intense during a shooting incident on the southwest side.
Yeah, that situation escalated quickly. Federal Border Patrol agents shot and wounded a woman, Miramar Martinez. Now, the official federal story is that she and another man were charged with assaulting federal officers. They allege she tried to ram the agents' vehicles with her car.
So the federal narrative is self-defense. Agents under attack.
Correct. That's their position. Agents acting in self-defense against a direct assault.
But as often happens in these situations, that official account isn't the only one.
Not at all. Local activists, witnesses on the scene, they strongly dispute the government's version. They claim the federal agents actually caused the collision, that they escalated things. Regardless of exactly what happened in that moment, the shooting itself immediately became a flashpoint. It triggered hours of protests right there in the Brighton Park neighborhood.
And how did the agents respond to the protests?
Well, reports say they used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the crowds.
So you have this cycle: federal operation, public outcry and resistance, then aggressive crowd control tactics.
Exactly. It demonstrates a real breakdown in trust and just how quickly these situations can escalate with this level of force involved.
The conflict didn't just stay at the street level either. It actually involved direct confrontations with elected officials, which feels unusual.
It's highly unusual, and a really telling detail from the sources. A Chicago alderperson, Jessie Fuentes, was reportedly handcuffed.
Handcuffed? Why?
She apparently went to a hospital where ICE officers were monitoring an injured suspect from some earlier pursuit. She questioned the officers, and reports say she was then handcuffed.
Cuffing a sitting city official. That's a direct clash. Federal enforcement versus local government authority right there in person.
Absolutely. It's a physical manifestation of that tension.
And then you have State Representative Lillian Jimenez's comment, which really sums up how local officials saw it. She said, ICE acted like an invading army in our neighborhoods. Helicopters hovered above our homes, terrifying families.
Yeah, that quote captures the sentiment perfectly, and it leads us straight into the more formalized pushback, moving beyond street protests now.
Right, into the legal and political arena.
Exactly. This is where the strategy shifts.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, analyzing the response. Governor J.B. Pritzker. His reaction sounds like it was pretty strong.
It was forceful, immediate, and very specific. Pritzker called for investigations right away. He explicitly said, and this is a quote, "Military-style tactics have no place in our neighborhoods. Full stop."
So condemning the methods directly.
Yes, and importantly, he didn't just condemn. He ordered state agencies to specifically investigate those claims about children being detained and zip-tied.
So using the state's own power to scrutinize the federal actions.
Precisely. It's the state government actively flexing its oversight muscle to challenge both the legality and the methods of a federal agency operating within its borders.
That's the political track. Now let's get into these legal strategies, because there seem to be two distinct approaches being used against DHS here. First, this very local one, the village of Broadview filing a federal lawsuit. What's that about? It's not civil rights, is it?
No, it's not directly about civil rights, and that's what makes it so, well, clever, really. Broadview hosts a major federal immigration processing center. They're suing DHS, but not over immigration policy. They're suing over basically local zoning and public safety codes.
Zoning? How does that work against a federal agency?
They allege DHS put up this unauthorized 8-foot fence around the facility. Unauthorized meaning it violates local laws. And critically, they claim this fence obstructs fire department access.
Ah, so they're using fire codes.
Exactly. They're weaponizing local ordinances. Things like fire safety regulations. They're arguing the fence is an immediate public safety hazard.
So it's like they're forcing DHS to play by the same local rules as any other building owner in the village.
That's precisely the strategy. They're seeking a temporary restraining order to get that fence taken down immediately. It's a way to legally obstruct or at least complicate the federal operation by focusing on these immediate, practical safety violations. It cleverly sidesteps the often much harder constitutional arguments.
Fascinating. Okay, so that's one legal front, local codes. But then there's the other big one, the constitutional challenge from civil rights groups. And they're using a specific tool, this 2022 consent decree. Remind us what that is.
Right. The consent decree is really important here. It's a major legal agreement from 2022 that sets rules for immigration arrests in Illinois and 5 other states. Basically, it requires federal agents to follow certain constitutional protections during arrests. Things like needing proper warrants, proper identification, limiting arrests in sensitive places like hospitals or schools or churches. It's meant to safeguard constitutional rights during the immigration enforcement process.
Okay, got it. So when these civil rights groups file dozens of complaints saying agents violated this decree, what are they arguing?
They're essentially arguing that all these aggressive actions we've been discussing, the alleged lack of warrants, the detention of citizens, maybe the tactics used, that these aren't just isolated incidents. They're arguing it represents what they call a systematic disregard for the protections mandated by that court order.
Systematic disregard. That sounds like a high bar to prove.
It is. It's definitely a high legal bar. But that's the argument they're making. And if they can prove it or make a strong enough case, well, the attorneys are seeking to actually extend the consent decree, make it potentially stricter or longer lasting.
So extending it would mean putting even tighter court-enforced limits on how federal agents can operate in this whole region, maybe permanently.
That's the goal, yes. To institutionalize more accountability, more constraints that go beyond just reacting to the current political moment or this specific operation.
So if you put these two legal strategies together, Broadview using local safety codes and civil rights groups using the multi-state consent decree, it's like a pincer movement, legally speaking.
That's a great way to put it, a legal pincer movement.
Yeah.
On one flank, you have hyper-local regulations, fire codes, zoning being used to physically constrain operations. And on the other flank, you have these broad, multi-state constitutional arguments using the consent decree to constrain the methods of arrest, the how. So the federal government, while trying to project strength and focus on national security threats like Tren de Aragua, they find themselves kind of bogged down, having to fight on these two very different legal fronts. One about fence permits, the other about fundamental rights. It forces them to defend their actions on procedural and safety grounds, diverting resources and attention.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this for listeners. What's the big picture here? We've seen this federal deportation drive justified by targeting dangerous criminals. But it seems to have escalated so much, so fast, that we're hearing about chemical agents near schools, elected officials in handcuffs, and this deep breakdown of trust leading to major legal battles.
I think the main takeaway is that this level of aggressive enforcement is really pushing the limits of federal authority. And it's not just encountering protests or political complaints. It's running into serious, structured legal resistance, from the local village level right up to multi-state constitutional challenges. And this resistance is forcing the courts to step in and essentially draw lines. Where does federal power end, and where do local safety rules and constitutional rights begin? It's become a crucial test case.
A test case for how local government and civil rights groups can push back against the national security apparatus.
Exactly. How they define and defend their own space, their own rules, against federal action.
So it leaves you with a really provocative thought, doesn't it? When a local village's fire code becomes a primary legal weapon against a federal agency operating under a national security banner, what does that tell you? What does it reveal about where power actually lies or how it's contested in our system today?
It suggests the boundaries are maybe more fluid and more actively fought over than we sometimes think.
And that tension between federal mission and local control, between security and rights,
Yeah.
it seems like it's only going to intensify based on what we're seeing here.